I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 350 plus undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Tuesday regulars all lined up for you. Glen West talking Tigers at 1:30. Sharif Ishak talking Saints and Pels at 2:30. We're going to talk briefly about Garrett Nussmeier's ranking on NCAA football, the video game. Not because I think that's important at all, but I do think it is reasonable to discuss his standing with his peers and kind of discuss just one other aspect of talking season with quarterbacks and whatnot. The transfer portal in baseball closes tonight, I believe at 11 o'clock our time. I haven't seen that in writing. Midnight is what you see. I'm going to assume that's Eastern time. I think there are officially 10 hours left for players to get in the transfer portal as we very, very clearly pointed out at the end of last week. The rumor mill is ablaze, not the actual portal. The rumor mill is ablaze with Ace Reese discussion, certainly on the Starkville side of things. If we hear anything over the next 2 hours, I'll let you know. But right now, LSU really has only had one player that I would call of significant consequence into the transfer portal. That's Ashton Larson. Certainly had a lot of other players, David Hogg and Mikey Ryan and several pitchers that didn't see much playing time this year have jumped in to the transfer portal, but Larson's really been the only one that had been I would call contributor on the team. I don't even know if I would go as far as say significant contributor, but contributor on the team. So LSU in good shape from that perspective. And they continue to add left-handed pitching out of the transfer portal. They got a commitment within the last hour, and I'll certainly talk about that in our next segment here. So plenty to do. Lock us in. We appreciate you being here. We'll start things the same way we start every single show. That is with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
So let's crank things up with some football talk. The Manning Passing Academy was this past weekend. Obviously, that's always a big deal here in South Louisiana. It's really kind of a big deal for the college football world because you've got some of the best quarterbacks in the country that come down to Thibodaux, and they spend time with Archie and Peyton and Eli, and Arch is there as kind of a headliner, and always the LSU quarterbacks go down there and enjoy a couple of days, and Garrett Nussmeier was in that number, along with Arch Manning and Lenora Sellers and Cade Klubnik. I mean, there are lots of quarterbacks that are going to be headlining this fall in college football that were down there in Thibodaux over the weekend. And Garrett Nussmeier was able to sit down with the media and answer a few questions. And Beck, we'll start with number 4 here. This is something that it was a leading question by one of the reporters. I don't mean that in a negative way, but it was just, they said, like, Brian Kelly has said this is the most talented roster he's had at LSU. And Garrett Nussmeier has been at LSU the whole time Brian Kelly has been at LSU, and 1 year previous to Brian Kelly arriving on campus. So Garrett Nussmeier has seen the exact same thing that Brian Kelly has seen in Baton Rouge. And this was Garrett's follow-up to, like, hey, Brian Kelly said this is the best team y'all have had.
Well, he's not lying. It's definitely the most talented roster that I've been a part of at LSU. It's the closest team I've been a part of at LSU from top to the bottom of the roster. And so it's very exciting. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of expectations for us. We accept those expectations. I think that not only is there an expectation for us from the outside, but there's also an expectation for us from within.
And that's all, I think, right on point with everybody outside the program as well, is looking at this roster going, okay, you've got some recruiting classes you've stacked up. You've got some playmakers and weapons that you've cultivated in-house, and you've also got some guys that you've added via the transfer portal that you're asking to do big things, and everybody feels like this is going to be a really, really talented team. And I'm going to get to my end point here after this soundbite, but I'll play this as Garrett Nussmeier talking about having a lot of different guys that have come in from different schools that are going to have to gel to become one team with huge expectations this fall.
Yeah, it's been huge. Obviously in this new era of college football, you have transfers and things like that. And the most important thing I think we've underlined is that, we have to be close. We have to create a chemistry, and I think we've done an unbelievable job with that. Whether it's you see the videos of us playing in the pool at Coach Kelly's house, or just hanging out over there, or doing different things, on our own time, just spending time around each other as much as we can, getting those transfers as comfortable as we can, and just trying to build that chemistry.
And that's all awesome. Like, it's great that LSU invested heavily in the transfer portal and signed some of the best players that were available to them. It's great that they've got a fifth-year senior quarterback coming back who is the most productive passer in the nation returning to school. It's great that they're going to Brian Kelly's for a pool party. It's great that Garrett Nussmeier feels like it's the most talented and most together team that he's been a part of. All that is awesome. And it all kind of funnels back to one of my, pillar talking points since I've been sitting in this chair now for 4 years. Pillar talking points. The college football calendar is so consistent. It starts in January, where you're hiring new coordinators and picking up recruits, and you're getting transfers in, and you've hired a new strength coach, and all that happens. And then you go to spring practice, and all the reports are glowing. And then you've got this time of year where they're not practicing. Nobody's torn an ACL out there yet. Nobody's broken a collarbone in an Oklahoma drill. Nobody's lost a game for sure. And everybody's really feeling good about themselves, right? Everybody feels like this is a team that's going to put it together. This is the team that's going to overachieve. This is the three guys that the national media is sleeping on. This is it's eternal optimism this time of year because of sessions like this. And certainly it beats the alternative of, not having a talented roster and nobody caring. And, it could be worse, but it's also tough for me to really sink my teeth in and be like, oh, see, this is the ticket. Now, there is one significant change to this messaging season of LSU football. And it's been talked about by the head coach, and it's now being talked about by the quarterback. And it's a focus on the first game of the season. Garrett Nussmeier talked about playing at Clemson and the challenge that will present, even though he feels like he's got a really, really talented team that is as together as any team that he's been a part of.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be loud. It's going to be, a very intense environment, and it's something that, we welcome, we invite. It's a great opportunity. You come to LSU to play in environments like that. You get to play in a night game against another top-ranked team on prime time. They got a lot of players that are going to play for a long time, and so do we. And so, it's going to be a dogfight. And I think that we've attacked every single day with that mindset, like you said, just to go 1-0.
1-0 is something that Garrett Nussmeier said. It's a 15-minute interview session. I'm not playing you 15 minutes of clips here. He said 1-0 4 or 5 times in this interview sit-down, and realizes that it's very difficult with the expectations that have been created for this specific LSU team. It's difficult to reach those if you lose another opener. It just is. And that's not something we have heard a lot of in summers past. Like, Brian Kelly has been open and was at the spring meeting saying, like, I have never in my career hung things on the wall in the facility talking about one football game to open the season. And they have done that this year. They have all their eyes focused on Clemson. And you can take that as a negative or as a positive as a fan. You can go, good, they better do that. They've lost 5 in a row. And you can say, well, they shouldn't do that. There's more season after the Clemson game. And you're not wrong either way, just the way that you feel about that messaging. What it doesn't change is that they're doing it. They are making sure that they are focused on that game and being ready to play that game. And that's a different message than we've heard. And this is also a different message than what we've heard from Garrett Nussmeier, just naturally speaking, because this time last year, he had never been a full-time starter. He has been a full-time starter. How much different is this summer than last summer was for the incumbent starting quarterback?
Oh, it's huge. Night and day difference, being able to go back and watch a full season of tape and to study myself and work on the things that I know I need to improve on and be able to, have substance there to identify those mistakes and find those corrections. So it's been really, really huge for me, something that, I'm very looking forward to being able to, get out on the field this fall and correct those mistakes.
Here's something I'm going to buy in on with Garrett Nussmeier. I think with his background, growing up with a dad as a coach, not like just some Joe high school coach, like at the highest level of college football, at the highest level of football, period. Garrett Nussmeier's been there with Doug. So I believe his background is going to allow him to analyze his performance a little bit more aptly than maybe someone without that background could. And I think there is a chance that he could really make some strides from what he was last year. He's had the same quarterbacks coach now for 4 years. He's a second-year starter. He's a fifth-year player. There's not much he hasn't seen to this point. Now, the question was asked of Garrett, like, okay, no, you watched all that film and stuff, and, like, what are you trying to work on?
Yeah, it's definitely no question that I didn't, use my legs enough last year and I wasn't mobile enough. And so I definitely made that a point of emphasis for me this year and this offseason, just as far as, weight training and things like that. Just, making myself, more twitchy and things like that. And so it's definitely been a good offseason. I think Coach Flynn has done a really good job. I think the whole team has kind of attacked the weight room and conditioning and a very, very strong mindset, a 1-0 mindset, as we keep talking about. So I think it's been very good.
This is such an easy correction to make. Like, it is so easy. I need to run more. Like, how easy is that to correct? It's hard to correct. Well, I'm Jameis Winston. I threw 20 interceptions last year. Like, that's just part of throwing the football. It's hard to correct things that you're physically unable to do. Just instead of keeping your eyes locked in down the field, like, just tuck it and go get 6 yards. Like, that is so easy to correct. And if he saw on tape, like, how often me and you, who are either zoomed out on the television or sitting inside Tiger Stadium, see the field and go, run! Like, that's easy to see. It's easy to do. I'm not asking for him to run for 1,000. I'm asking him to run 3 more times a game and go get the 6 yards when they're there instead of trying and then forcing it down the field. Just go run. And I think he's going to do that. And now there's one more talking point I want to get to here, which is the inevitable comparisons between Garrett Nussmeier and Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. I'm going to push back on those today, in 2 weeks when we go to Atlanta for media days, when they start fall camp, leading up to the Clemson game. Like, I'm going to push back on, well, he might win the Heisman. Like, that's hard to do. It's hard to win the Heisman. It's hard to be as good as Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels were in their final college years. And the odds are Garrett Nussmeier won't be quite that good. He could be. He could win the Heisman. Absolutely. Am I going to say, well, Burrow won the Heisman and Daniels won the Heisman, so he's probably going to win the Heisman? I'm not going to do that. But I think there's a chance that he could have a really good year. I like his answer to this question when asked about the leap that Burrow and Daniels made and then him going into his second year at LSU.
I'm Garrett Nussmeier. I'm not Jaden Daniels. I'm not Joe Burrow. I'm Garrett Nussmeier. And so I'm going to be the best Garrett Nussmeier that I can be, and hopefully it's enough for the LSU Tigers.
Garrett Nussmeier is a better quarterback than he is a quote. He's generally pretty vanilla in front of the mic, and this is one of those vanilla answers. But if he means that to his core, and knows that he doesn't have to do the things that he watched Jaden Daniels do, then I think he'll be okay. And look, I'm not trying to like pour cold water on this whole thing at all. I think that LSU's offense is going to be great this year. I just don't want to immediately hold Garrett Nussmeier right directly to the greatest 2 seasons in the history of quarterback at LSU and say, if you don't reach that, you've failed. LSU's got to do a lot of things around Garrett Nussmeier to be as good as they need to be. They got to play much better defense. They've got to run the ball significantly better. They need to be more dynamic on the outside at wide receiver. Like, there are things that are out of his control that have to go well for LSU to reach where they're going to be, but he's got to be central to LSU's best efforts. And I think he knows that. I know he knows that. And he doesn't have to do exactly what those other 2 guys did. So that's a look at what Garrett Nussmeier had to say. I think some of the messaging is interesting. And we are firmly into talking season here, y'all. Very, very much into talking season. It is July 1st, which means this is a time in this industry that is different than every other month. For the rest of the time, while I cover LSU specifically, they will not play a game in July ever. And I personally love the games more than anything. There are things we have to talk about with house settlements and NIL deals and portal issues and official visits and whatever the case may be. But I'm in this because I love the games, and there are no games in July ever. So we buckle our chin straps metaphorically, and we dive into talking season and get into all this, and that's what we'll do for the next month. We get a fun week, which is a busy week in Atlanta in 2 weeks for SEC Media Days, and then you turn around in 2 weeks, they report for camp, and then they're practicing their interviews, and we're knee-deep into it again until they leave the field, hopefully in Omaha, 10 months later. But for July, doesn't say we have nothing to talk about. That's not what I'm suggesting. I am suggesting it's not my favorite stuff to talk about. My favorite stuff to talk about are the games. We don't have those, so we get into stuff like this. We'll do a little bit more of that with baseball transfer portal. LSU got a left-handed pitcher as a commitment today. I'll tell you about him next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Every car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Safety is a big deal when you're picking out a new vehicle. How about you get behind the wheel of one of the safest cars on the road? Every single model in the Genesis line, all of them. Entry level, highest end, SUV, down to the sedan, all of them. IHA top safety picks, all of them. Some of them top safety picks plus. You know, when you get behind the wheel of a Genesis, you are in one of the safest cars on the road. It's important to them. Part of the experience of being a Genesis driver. Get that safety and security. You get 3 years of complimentary maintenance. You get a 100,000-mile, 10-year warranty. Go by and see my friends at Genesis of Baton Rouge. They're airline at Pico, across from Women's Hospital. Of course, online at Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every single car that's on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. That's Genesis of Baton Rouge.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
All right, Kendall Rogers, D1 Baseball, with a little tweet here. Says, Scoop, contrary to popular reports on the internet, Ace Reese tells me he will stay put in Starkville, will not enter the transfer portal. So that's a big keep there for Mississippi State, obviously. That was a lot of drama. Clearly, Ace Reese is a guy, I mean, this is from Robbie Falk, who covers Mississippi State as closely as anybody, does an awesome job for the On3 team, said that, like, the team, they met with Ace Reese, like, into the wee morning hours of this past, like, today, like, last night. So clearly, like, significant discussions going on with Ace Reese, not really sure what he wanted to do. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what was so appealing about getting out of Starkville. Like, I don't know. Everybody's motivated a little bit differently. Maybe he just wanted to see what was out there. I'm not sure, but it doesn't appear that he's going to get into the transfer portal. A lot of smoke rumored about that LSU was trying to goad him into that. I have no knowledge of that whatsoever. But it was interesting, and certainly the message boards were ablaze over the last week or so. But he will stay put in Starkville, according to Kendall Rogers. Still has, I guess, 9 hours to change his mind there. One player that was in the transfer portal that LSU has added a commitment from is left-handed pitcher Santiago Garcia from Oregon. Garcia is a native of Las Cruces, New Mexico, like Stephen Milam. He played at Centennial High School, like Stephen Milam. They were teammates at Centennial High School in Las Cruces. Santiago Garcia went to Central Arizona Community College, which is a very high-level JUCO league that he played in. Played against San Jacinto and some of those really good teams out west, and decided after that to go to Oregon, where he spent one season. He's 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, and for the Ducks this past year was a high-usage reliever. He had 24 appearances out of the bullpen. That tied for the Ducks' lead. And his numbers are not going to blow you away for the season. He threw 30 innings, 40 strikeouts, and 19 walks, so high strikeouts, high walks. An ERA of 4.2. So not eye-popping numbers on their surface there for Oregon. He did have 4 saves for the Ducks. But if you dig a little bit deeper into Santiago Garcia, which I did, there's something that I like an awful lot. His last 10 appearances at Oregon totaled 10 2/3 innings, so about an inning at a time. In those 10 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 12 strikeouts, and 4 walks. So he saved his best pitching for the end of the season at Oregon out of the back end of their bullpen, where he picked up a couple of saves there in those 10 2/3 innings. And then you add that into what he's doing on Cape Cod right now. He is throwing in the Cape Cod League, and thus far this summer, 9 innings, 3 hits, 13 strikeouts, 5 walks. He has not allowed an earned run at all for Hyannis this year on Cape Cod. So if I do this extra activity here, and I take the end of his season from April into May, and then I tack on his Cape Cod effort, which is pitcher-friendly league. They hit with wooden bats up there, and the pitchers generally do a really good job. But if I take those two efforts, the end of the season and Cape Cod, what he's done, 19 2/3 innings, 1 earned run, 25 strikeouts to 9 walks, just 7 hits in those 19 2/3. I haven't seen any of this, so I'm speaking a little bit out of turn, but it stands to reason he probably found something about a month and a half ago. Whether breaking ball, better command, he found something that was significantly better than February, March, and April in May, June, and now through July. And this is another left-handed ad. You got Ryler Smart from Tennessee. You got Danny Lockenmeyer from North Dakota State. You return Cooper Williams. You return DJ Primo. We'll see what Connor Ware decides to do. But you've got now a strong group of left-handed pitchers to go into the season with. All of these guys, with the exception of Williams, to me, profile as relievers. We'll see. They'll certainly have great resources at LSU to expand their role, whether that's to become a closer, whether that's to become a starting pitcher. Like, they'll have the opportunity. But you've got to stockpile pitching, and Jay Johnson very, very strongly believes in left-handed pitching. So I'm not going to speak to the signing class this week. I will probably do that. Well, I'll definitely do that next week before we go off to media days. The following week, I'll get into LSU's high school signing class. It is incredibly volatile. I'll tell you that. There are probably 10 or 11 names at the top that are significant draft risks. They won't lose all 10 or 11. They won't keep all 10 or 11. But I'm not going to get into that probably until next week. I'm talking about the group that we saw on the team this year and that they're bringing in from the portal. Those are the guys that you feel comfortable that they are going to have on this team. So to have Cooper Williams, DJ Primo, Ryler Smart, Danny Lockenmeyer to start with, and potentially Connor Ware, I think that's a good left-handed nucleus. And I think that the way to do this with a pitching staff is to get as many talented arms as you can in the boat. You just have to do it. I know that our opinion could be skewed based on what we just watched in Omaha, where it went, I mean, I think I can remember everybody they used in the College World Series. It was Anderson to Shores to Evans, and then it was Ianson to Evans to Shores, and then it was Anderson, and then it was I missed the Cowan game where they used multiple guys in that Arkansas game at the back end of the week. But then you got to the championship series, and it was just Anderson, Ianson, Shores, and that was it. And that looks good. That blueprint sounds good. Well, you just ride your horses until you get in the loser's bracket, and then you can't. So you've got to have as many talented arms as you can find. And if they're only good for 6 outs, that's fine. And these guys have been 6-out guys. Lockenmeyer was this year. He had a couple of 3-inning outings. You're looking at Garcia. He was very much a 1 to 1 2/3 type guy for Oregon this year. Primo has been that in his career. So that's what they kind of profile as, and that's okay. If you have 4 or 5 left-handers, that's a really good place to start, and we haven't even gotten to potential adds out of the high school class. So I like where LSU sits with left-handers. You're very rarely going to have left-handers come in that throw 96, 97, like the Liam Doyles are rarities. They don't play a lot of college baseball. But if you've got a lot of guys that are 90 to 94 and can spin the ball, like that's good for a college left-handed staff. One of them develops into Cade Anderson, even better. Gauge jump, even better. But it's a good start, and I like what Garcia has shown thus far over the last 2 months of his baseball life. So Santiago Garcia, former high school teammate of Stephen Milam, headed to Baton Rouge to play for the Tigers. That's a quality ad from the Oregon Ducks earlier today for LSU. We'll keep you posted on anything else that we hear while we're on the air. It sounds like LSU may not be done today based on the internet rumblings, but if that happens while I'm still on, we'll certainly let you know about it. Glen West, Go 24/7 next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Always good when we chat with our guy Glen West. Go 24/7 joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Glen, how we doing?
I'm doing all right, Hunt. Just gearing up for a bachelor's trip tomorrow.
Huh?
So we're going to be on vacation here for a few days coming up soon.
What's on the docket there? Beach, golf.
We're hitting up Puerto Rico for a few days.
All right.
About nine or 10 of us from high school, so that'll be fun.
I like to hear that. I've been to Puerto Rico. Very fun. Excellent work. Well, enjoy that. But before you do that, talk to me about sports.
Sure.
Let's talk about your time. You went down to Manning Passing Academy, chatted with Garrett Nussmeier briefly. What were your main takeaways from that?
Yeah, I think probably for me, the one thing that he said that I think really stood out to me, at least, is just the kind of work he's been putting on his body this offseason. I mean, he's really, I think, taken it to heart that he didn't use his legs a whole ton last year, and that's been a major focus for him in terms of building his body up the right way, and then trying to build some quickness, build some more stamina, and so when those opportunities do present themselves, he can be confident that he can go out and get some big yards down the field with his legs when he needs to. And look, this isn't going to be a guy that rushes for 600, 700, 800 yards, but if he can just keep defenses honest with his legs, I think most people that are watching can see that it will add another dynamic to this offense and certainly open up some things come fall for this group.
What do you think is a realistic next step for Garrett Nussmeier? Because he got the questions about Daniels and Burrow, and I keep pushing back on that. But how do you feel about the next step in his progression?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple different things. Cutting back on the turnovers is certainly doable. I think for him, having some vertical threats this year is really going to help open up another layer of this offense. They were just missing Chris Hilton so much last year, and you got a chance to see in that Oklahoma game and certainly in the Baylor game what the presence of a vertical threat can do for this offense when Nussmeier is behind center. He's got the arm talent, he can make all of the throws, but Certainly the decision-making is going to have to evolve this year. He's going to have to cut back on turnovers. He's going to have to be a little bit more comfortable, I think, in the pocket when things break down, which I think is why using his legs will help in some fashion in that regard. But he's got all the tools to be a really good quarterback in the SEC this year and one of the best in college football. And it's just going to take a couple tweaks here and there to make it a more efficient, well-rounded game. And if he's able to do that, I think LSU's offense and this team are going to reap the rewards of that.
Yeah, talked about his offensive line and how there's going to be a pretty big turnover there. What did you get the sense of how he feels about that group entering camp?
Yeah, that's the single biggest question mark I think that you can have from an outsider's perspective when looking into this team right now. And I did ask him about that, and he gave me kind of the quarterback's answer that you'd want to hear. He talked about how those guys have been, working a lot with Brad Davis, or I guess working a lot together this summer. And then when Brad Davis gets them in the fall, they can really hit the ground running. I think that the tackle spots are probably pretty solidified between Tyree Adams and Weston Davis. I do think the interior line and certainly the center position are still pretty wide open in terms of who's going to be in that grouping of who starts. And look, it could very well be a situation where LSU's week 1 starters on the O-line are very different from their week 3 or their week 4 starters. I think they're going to keep an open mind with this thing early in the season, but you just want to have some kind of continuity going into the first game against Clemson because, quite honestly, that's going to be the toughest defensive line you could face all season long. And so to do that in week 1 or have to go through that in week 1 is going to be a real challenge and a real big test for that group.
That's the point, and I would suggest it's the problem.
Yeah.
But that is what it is. I mean, it'd be nice if you could break in a couple of mid-major games and then go play Clemson on the road.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. So here we go. We'll see what they can do as an offense there. Do you sense that the messaging from Brian Kelly and Garrett Nussmeier this time around is a little bit different than you've heard in previous years? I'm picking up on a lot of 1-0, and we got to focus on Clemson, and we got stuff hanging on the football facility. Do you sense that there's a little bit of a different vibe this offseason?
Oh, definitely. I think so. I think really the first I'd heard of it, though, was going back to BK did a podcast, I think, with the college football game day guys a couple weeks ago, and he had talked about just, they had been doing things that he hasn't really done in his entire career, and that was focusing all their energy and their effort on Clemson for this week 1 matchup. And, I think it's a different approach for sure. I will see if it resonates with the guys. I mean, I asked the same thing to Nussmeier last week at Manning Passing Academy, and he talked about, there's a lot of rah-rah going on right now about just making sure these guys are physically ready to handle that first week and that first game because, let's face it, I mean, LSU has a long schedule ahead of it outside of the Clemson game, but that's going to be a defining moment for this team and just how far they can go, what their outlook of the entire season looks like, and really the wiggle room that you have or don't have if you win or lose that game. And so it could very well be the defining game of K's career in terms of just how important and massive it would be to get that win, but also how devastating it would be to have to start another season 0-1. So that's a lot of energy and effort have been put into those guys recognizing how important a game that this is going into the off season, and we'll see what kind of results it merits here on August 30th.
All right. They talked also about watching the baseball team win the national championship, and the chase to win the next one is already on because the transfer portal has opened up. LSU is doing what they can to fill out the roster, and you're seeing very clear path here that LSU sees toward left-handed pitching. What do you make of 3 of the 5 additions being left-handed arms?
Yeah, it's certainly an emphasis. I mean, look, when you look at this kind of roster that's coming back, I mean, Cooper Williams is certainly coming back. We'll see about DJ Primo. I don't know, what maybe his draft prospects look like or portal prospects look like, but he's somebody that certainly could return and be an arm for LSU. So that's only 2 guys, really, that you have returning as left-handed pitchers, and that you could certainly make the argument LSU was a little bit scarce in that department this year outside of Anderson and Cooper Williams. And so, I think that they've really made a concerted effort to go get some guys. And look, I just talking to a few people, they really like Danny Lockenmeyer, the guy that they got from North Dakota State. We've heard pretty religiously this season how Jay Johnson felt about Anthony Ianson and how there's always a player that you get out of the portal that can really change the fortunes of your season and just the outlook of your overall ceiling, the ceiling of your team. I think they feel this way about Lockenmeyer, and I think that they think he's going to be a real centerpiece of what they do on the pitching staff side of things next year. So to get that player in out of the portal, for him to still have a couple of years of eligibility before he can go to the draft, I think is also going to be really important. So they've done their due diligence on these guys. They went out and they found some really impact players on both the pitching side and then also on the infield side of things too, between Braden Simpson and Seth Darter. And doesn't sound like they're done either. I think there's probably going to be some more moves here over the next week to 10 days.
Do you have a profile, like in terms of what you think they might be looking to add? It just seems like it's kind of a crowded roster at this point. Like, is there is there some aspect that they're looking to add to their team?
I think you could probably point to outfield being an area they might want to address, whether it's just one guy or two guys, whatever they feel is necessary. But look, I mean, you got Larson that just entered the transfer portal. Things are very up in the air right now, I think, with Chris Stanfield and Ethan Fry, and whether or not you can get one of those guys back. I would probably lean right now, as we're sitting here today, that both of those guys end up signing professional contracts. So that leaves Jake Brown and Derek Curiel as two outfielders, but then who's going to be the other guy? So I could certainly look at outfield as a position they might want to attack. More pitching. You can never have too many pitchers. And then I think that they really want to add another power bat, another infielder, another bat in this thing as well. And so I would guess 2 to 3 more players out of the portal. Jay's talked a lot this offseason, even on your show. I remember from a couple weeks ago about how picky they want to be in terms of adding guys because they feel like they have a strong core returning. So I do think that there'll be a couple more additions, but I don't think you'll see a real massive overhaul through the portal this year for LSU.
Travel safe. Have a great time, and we'll talk soon.
All right. I appreciate you, Hunt. Thank you.
Glen West, Go 24/7, senior writer for your team coverage, recruiting coverage. They got you covered over at Go 24/7. Let me piggyback on that while we're here because we're going to come back and change gears away from this top talking point. Chris Stanfield and Ethan Fry, if they come back to LSU, will sign for peanuts next year. Like, you $10,000, $12,000, $18,000, $20,000. Factor in taxes and paying your agent. Like, it's just not much there. Ethan Fry could potentially sign something in the low six figures. I don't know if Stanfield's quite there because the tools are limited with Stanfield. He's just never going to hit for a lot of power, and he's kind of a dead pull hitter. But he can run. But that's really the defense is his best tool. But you're talking about forfeiting some significant money if you leave, depending on what your NIL situation is at LSU, and you're kind of going out on top here. That can be your last memory, and then you go try to make things happen professionally and see what happens. So I'm with Glenn there. I don't know that I expect either of them back. I would suggest you have a better chance with Stanfield than Fry, but any thought that they could bolster their draft stock is completely out the window because all draft stock means is money, and you lose all your money if you play your fourth college year. So I don't know what the NIL situation is. I know that the house settlement deal changes the way you can operate over there. And I do know this, that LSU has had conversations with all of their players that have draft options and returning options. So we're not talking about guys who have exhausted their eligibility. Like, no, you're not Luis Hernandez. They're not having conversations with him. He's done. Michael Braswell, done. But guys who could return and could go to the draft, they've had conversations with those guys about what their plan would look like here in Baton Rouge. What those plans are, I can't tell you. But they have had those conversations. And so to Glenn's point, like, there may be an opportunity to go add an outfield bat. And then again, I keep going back to this because it's important. Like, I don't know what this high school signing class is going to look like. This is a signing class that's different than most of the ones I've evaluated with LSU, where there are so many, like, there are no Connor Griffins in this class. There was no chance ever that Connor Griffin was going to play college baseball. He was like the 3rd ranked player in the draft. Like, that guy is not in this class. But there are a bajillion of them from 30 to 200. And like, that's the meat of, can you get them to campus and will they sign professionally? And you're going to lose some, and you're going to get some, and I can't venture right now to give you a great handle on what that's going to look like. So I'm avoiding that conversation for another week so I can sink my teeth a little bit more deeply into it, and then I'll let you know what my thoughts are. But Fry and Stanfield and Cowan are probably the most important conversations right now. Those three guys, I think it's reasonable to suggest they could come back, and I would probably lean toward the two offensive guys not coming back. We'll see. But again, I'm not etching that in stone. I'm just giving you an opinion based on nothing more than understanding of the industry, not the individual situations. I have no idea what Ethan Fry or Zach Cowan or Chris Stanfield feels about their degree, how close they are to their degree, how badly they want to get out of college and go play, how badly they don't want to go ride buses in the Midwest on minor league baseball, and they'd rather play on ESPN against Georgia. Like I don't. Those individual situations. I don't know. So I'll just kind of wait on those guys and the draft that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. Let's come back and close out the hour. There are two LSU players listed among the fastest 10 in that new college football video game. See if you can guess the two. We'll tell you when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
All right, the new college football video game comes out here in the next couple of weeks, and they've started to leak some of their scores, which I'm not here to
ratings hunt.
Yeah, ratings, whatever. I'm not here to suggest that that's a really, really important talking point.
It's pretty important, actually.
But I do think that it's interesting that I would disagree with one little the top 10 fastest players on the game. Nick Harbor is one of 4 players that is a 99 speed. It's the fastest you can be. Now, Nick Harbor is a freak at South Carolina, runs track, is trying to run in the Olympics. So that makes sense. But LSU has a player that's number 99, that's a 99 speed. Berrien Brown is a 99 speed on the game, which I think makes sense if you're going to make him one of the best kick returners out there. When he gets into the open field, he's got to turn it up a notch. But I'm just telling you, Jelani Watkins is a 98 speed, which is, it's 1 point, but Jelani Watkins is like a legit track guy.
Yeah.
I got a feeling if I put Jelani Watkins and Berrien Brown in a 100-meter race or a 100 or a 60-yard race or whatever, I like Jelani Watkins' chances.
Yes.
As a track guy. I mean, I get it. We're going to go with Berrien Brown, who's a kick returner, he's going to be a starting wide receiver, so he's going to be out on the field a little bit more. But I mean, we got to go with the track guy as the fastest guy. And Shea Dixon's on Twitter, and he's like, I just already know LSU fans are going to put Jelani Watkins at quarterback. And that's probably going to happen some because he's exceptionally fast. I found it so interesting last year at SEC Media Days. Brian Kelly was asked about freshmen that could play. And the first name he mentioned last year was Jelani Watkins. And I'm not sure why that was the first name he mentioned, because Jelani Watkins didn't really play last year. But I was thinking, like, for that to be the first name that comes out, you've got to have something had to have happened that he thought Jelani Watkins was going to be a factor on last year's team. And of course that didn't necessarily happen. But speed is not an issue for Mr. Watkins. He is one of the fastest players, I think, to ever wear an LSU uniform. And one of the names not on this list is Chris Hilton, who I would also take running against just about anybody. But LSU has 2 of the top 10 fastest players on the game. Nobody else in that category has 2 of them. Some familiar names on this list: a Kendrick Law, Captain Shreve product, who had been at Alabama, is now at Kentucky. He's a 97 speed. Zachariah Branch, who you may remember from USC last year, we were talking about leading up to that game. He's at Georgia now, 97 speed. And then Jordan Anthony from Arkansas, who I don't even know who that is, but he's a 99 speed on the game. And one of the fastest players. So if you're playing NCAA with LSU, Get the ball to Berrien Brown and Jelani Watkins. They run very, very fast. And then quickly, I'll mention the top 20 quarterbacks. Maybe we'll get into this in the second hour. But Cade Klubnik is the number 1 quarterback on the game at 92 overall, tied with Garrett Nussmeier, 92 overall. So the 2 best quarterbacks in the country, according to the all-important rankings on EA Sports NCAA Football 26, will face each other in the first game of the season. Beck, I'll be honest, the more I think about that game and the fact that you're going to Clemson, where they have an obscene record, and you're playing a team that's got multiple first-round projected draft picks on the defensive line and what the video game says is the best quarterback in the country, it makes me a little apprehensive. I'll be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know that the rating from a college football game should make it even more for you, but it definitely still is going to be very daunting.
Little apprehensive here on the 1st of July. That's it for hour number 1. If you missed any of it, including our conversation with Glen West, a little baseball transfer portal talk, you can catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. We're going to step aside for Sports Center at the top of the hour. We'll chat Saints with Sharif Ishak in 35 minutes. Hope your work week's off to a good start. We'll pause for national headlines and come back with hour number 2, Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.